I mentioned in the earlier video up to the point of my working on human resource development at a macro level, at a national level, and writing this book. In fact, when I wrote that book and that got published in India, some of my HRD colleagues said that what is this TV Rao is writing? He has totally gone into a different world. This is not what we think of HRD as. I felt very sorry for them that because I think HRD was being limited only to corporate sector. I think this is something which you will find in most of my talks in National HRD Network. In fact, the reason for starting HRD Network is to treat HRD at a national level. Corporate sector can always take care of itself. But I think one has to learn from corporate sector, use it, apply it at a larger way and so on. In the national context, we use the term Human Development Index, whereas in the company context, we are yet to find a measure of human development, human resource development. That is when I came up with this concept of HRD audit. Since most organizations are not tapping the full potential they have, although they started human resource development department, some of them renamed personnel and not doing enough. Some of them who are doing good work could do a lot more. That is when we started doing an audit of HRD. I must say that the main source behind the entire our work on HRD audit is Aditya Birla Group. Those were the days when Aditya Vikram Birla asked all the unit heads to independently get their HRD audited, and he didn't even want to see the reports. This is when we were invited by companies like Indo-Gulf, Gwalior Rayons, and some of the cement factories and so on. I think we did for about 10 Birla companies using the same framework of HRD audit, which includes that we audit the HR systems, we audit the HR competencies, and HR competencies are included to mean competencies of HR staff, learning attitude of line managers, top management styles, and unions and associations and their attitude to HRD, credibility of HRD. These are the competencies. Then we also talked of the culture, HRD culture, values, and so on, and the alignment of HRD practices with the organizational outcomes. These were partly conceptually presented in my HRD missionary book, but we evolved systems of assessing this, and that's when I wrote my book HRD Audit on the basis of our experiences we have had. In fact, when this book was published, I wanted to call it HRD Score Card, but Sage Publications preferred HRD Audit to Score Card. So that is when I titled the book as HRD Audit with focus on scorecard. So you will find the book published much before HR Scorecard of Dave Ulrich mentioning the HR Scorecard concept in the book HRD Audit. The next logical part of the HRD audit is to convert it into quantifiable measures. So the HRD Scorecard 2500, and partly by the time HR Scorecard of Dave Ulrich had come, but Dave has not quantified this. ISO has quantified the quality and came up with measures, some 1400 points and all kinds of things were being talked of. So I thought sometimes the numbers catch people, so we should be able to come up with a scorecard. That is when I wrote the book HRD Scorecard 2500. This was an outcome of applying HRD audit for a large number of organizations. That is why you will find HRD Scorecard, although we were using the scorecard between 1993 and 203 or 4, it took quite some time for me to. I prepared manuals, I was using the manuals, but it was published much later. I think it was published sometime in the year 2006 or 7. HRD Scorecard 2500. That is another book I have written. This was the time HRD Network, which I promoted HRD Network in 1985 itself, and I was president for the first 3 years. We got MRR Nair to be the second president. Uday Parikh became the third president. V.S. Mahesh were there for a short period, and then we had other people, including Mr. Pandey from SAIL and so on. So I think HRD Network was on its way with a little bit of ups and downs. This was the time when I think the HRD Network presidentship changed from Arvind Agarwal to Dr. Santupt Mishra. And we were talking of what is the future of HRD. A lot of changes were going on in the country, and we wanted to see in the changes that are happening, where there is a lot of pressure on HR people, talent is being recognized, innovations are coming, assessment centers have become popular, that and organization development is all the time being talked of. So we talked of the future of HRD. In fact, the conference to be held at Bombay was to be future of HRD. That is when I spent quite some of my time thinking about the future of HRD and wrote this book, The Future of HRD, which was published by Macmillan. And you will find in this book a lot of satirical references to HRD. Just to make, not me to make fun, but the kind of fun being made of HRD, I have put it there. So if you read the book, you will find some cartoons in the book. Very interesting, very intriguing kind of things to say what HRD is and what HRD is not. In the same book, I have devoted to a chapter on the basis of my work with Commonwealth Secretariat. When you look at HRD in the future, how HRD should extend itself to national level, and talked of Human Development Index. I did some more work at the time, presented the Human Development Index of South Asian countries and gave a comparison and talked of the changing role of HRD people and so on. In fact, in all my speeches of HRD network, wherever I got an opportunity, I use it to say that once in a while HR people in corporate sector should get out of the corporate sector, work with an NGO, work into the community, so that their humanness comes up and it gives a lot more meaning to HRD. I think this is the essence of this book called Future of HRD. That is how Future of HRD was written. And to tell you a slight story, when I wrote HRD Missionary, the book was circulated, copies were bought and circulated. The copies were available at 25 rupees a copy to everyone. When the Future of HRD book came, I wanted the book to be also given in the conference. I think the conference was being attended by 300 to 400 people. Macmillan was willing to give it at 50% rate. But the people who are organizing the conference at the time said, we will be happy to give it provided Macmillan gives us a bookstall, finances a bookstall, and that cost about 2 lakhs of rupees. And if you sell about 20 to 30,000 copies, the royalty on that will be less than 1 lakh of rupees. So no publisher was willing to put up a bookstall. So unfortunately, the book could not be given to people in National HRD Network, although the theme of the conference was Future of HRD, and it had to be sold on its own. But I must say that the book has been a pretty popular book. It went on for such a long time, and it's still there, and I think the concepts that we talked about there are very relevant. Next in the line is an important book that I wrote, 100 Managers in Action. That was the time we were reading and we were using a lot of Western literature, and there are books that have come up that talked of surveying people who use a 360-degree feedback. Like in one of the studies, 80,000 people who used 360 feedback was surveyed, and these people, among them, they identified those who used it for well and became great leaders. And this book came out, and I thought this is an excellent book, and therefore by the time we already had about 3,000 top level managers going through 360 feedback of TVRLS. So I said, why don't I do it, which included Birla Group, Tata Group, and so many others who went through, both in our TVRLS announcer programs and others. So I thought I must replicate this particular concept. And then we arranged all the 360 feedback data that we had into we used the first tool in the RSDQ model, roles part of it. Who are the people who are perceived as performing all the roles, which includes articulating vision, managing juniors, managing colleagues, managing bosses, managing customers, and so on. Normally 55 item questionnaire. We compiled the scores, and we organized the people who have scored high in a descending order, and identified 300 candidates out of the 3,000 as leaders. These are the people. I may not be remembering the exact number, it is 3,000 or 8,000, but we went through all of them. These are the people who made an impact on others. So we wanted to document their stories. So we took high scorers of these 300 taken out of 3,000 people and wrote letters to them saying that we have used our 360 data only to identify you as an influential leader. We want to know your life story. So once the purpose of 360 is over, we were only interested in documenting their case studies. That is how I wrote the book 100 Managers in Action. These were actually 104 of them. I discovered a few more whom I must include. So although I called it 100 Managers in Action, there are about 104 managers whose life has been profiled, talked about their childhood, their early schooling, college, and things like that. So this is another interesting kind of a book that I had done. This was the time IIM Ahmedabad was celebrating its Golden Jubilee, and IIM decided its knowledge should be available to those who could not afford to come to IIM Ahmedabad. And then 4 of us were asked to write the initial first 4 books. I wrote on whatever we used to teach in OB. I kept thinking, and I came up with a new classification of managers I have come across in my last 30-35 years of work life. I call them as doers, which are performers, achievers, who are constantly driven by achievement, and visionaries and missionaries, and identified a number of qualities of these people and started with the hypothesis. Identify where you are. I have given a questionnaire and try to build yourself, take yourself to the next level. If you are a doer, don't be satisfied, become an achiever. If you are an achiever, you should be a visionary, and then later on as a missionary. So this book has become best-selling book. It's an IIMA book series published by Penguin, and it is with the success of this book, Penguin approached me to write another, which is of general nature. That is where I wrote this book, Effective People, which is again fully my contribution. Effective People. Now, if you read the book Effective People, now new edition has come up in the year 2024, again by the Penguin Books. You will know a lot about the reasons why I wrote the book. And this book deals with effective people from different professions: doctors, civil servants, teachers, educational entrepreneurs, social workers, actors, and so on. So largely I used inputs from our interviews, selected people on the basis of my own talks, and also the people who impacted me in my own life. So this is another book which I wrote. But I must mention another important book which I wrote in between was this book called Hurconomics. And it has happened in a funny way. We recruited a new executive assistant in my company, actually a secretary in my company, and this person was being paid an ordinary, very limited salary of 20,000 rupees. In fact, I started imagining some of the things, and I found that this person is spending a lot of his time on mobile phones. So it occurred to me to calculate the time that is spent. So I discovered if you give 10,000 rupees salary, the time cost of the person is 1 rupees a minute, which means a 15-minute tea break is at the expense of the company for 15 rupees. But the opportunity cost I calculated was the contribution expected from this individual. In IT companies it is 4 times, it becomes 4 multiplied by 15, 60 rupees. And in oil companies it is 20 times, it becomes even a lot more. So I started looking at the output of the companies and then started putting a number on the financial value of an individual. That is when I wrote this book, Hurconomics. It's a very interesting kind of a book for you to read. Well, friends, these are some of the books that I wrote, and each book was written because I got stimulated, felt passionate about it, and felt that I must share my knowledge with other people. It takes, like I mentioned earlier, it takes almost a couple of years for the time you conceptualize to bring out the book. But passion and the desire to disseminate are the 2 key points that makes me write books. I hope this sharing is of some use to you. All the best. Be a great writer.